Over half of British workers say they feel stressed every single day. Not just once in a while, every day. And here's the kicker. The UK ranks among the most overworked and anxious countries in all of Europe. Yes, even ahead of nations with notoriously intense work cultures. But why? What's driving this stress epidemic? Is it just the long hours? Or is there something deeper? Something we don't usually talk about? Picture this. You wake up, already dreading the day ahead. The morning commute feels like a battle. Your inbox is overflowing before you even grab a coffee. Then come the deadlines, the pressure to perform, and a boss who's never satisfied. By the time you get home, you're too drained to enjoy the little time you have with your family or even yourself. Sounds familiar? You're not alone. Millions of workers across the UK are trapped in a cycle of burnout, anxiety, and exhaustion. But here's the twist. Some of the reasons behind this overwhelming stress might shock you. It's not just about workload. It's about a system that's set up to keep people on edge, struggling to catch their breath. In this video, we'll uncover the 10 biggest reasons why British workers are among the most stressed in Europe. Watch the complete video because what you're about to learn could completely change how you think about work and stress. Number 1. Long working hours. Let's start with one of the biggest culprits. Long working hours. British workers are clocking in some of the longest hours in Europe. On average, full-time employees in the UK work about 42 hours a week. That's 2 hours more than the European average. But here's the real issue. These extra hours don't necessarily mean more productivity. In fact, studies show that working longer doesn't make people more efficient. It just makes them more exhausted and prone to mistakes. Think about it. How many times have you stayed late at work only to feel drained and less focused the next day? The problem gets worse when overtime becomes the norm. For many British workers, leaving on time isn't even an option. There's a constant pressure to do more or to prove your dedication to the job, even if it means sacrificing your personal life. Over time, this leads to burnout, poor mental health, and strained relationships. And it's not just about the hours spent in the office. Many people find themselves bringing work home, answering emails, taking calls, or finishing up tasks late into the evening. It feels like there's no real break, no boundary between work and life. Now imagine doing this week after week, month after month. It's no surprise that so many workers feel like they're running on empty. Without enough time to rest and recharge, stress builds up and the body starts to suffer. Sleep deprivation, anxiety, and even heart problems have all been linked to overwork. So while those long hours might seem like the price of success, they're really just a fast track to chronic stress and burnout. Number 2. High cost of living. If long hours aren't stressful enough, add the high cost of living to the mix. For millions of workers in the UK, it feels like no matter how much they earn, it's never enough to cover the basics, let alone save for the future. Here's the harsh reality. Rents are skyrocketing, energy bills are through the roof, and even the weekly grocery shop has become a financial balancing act. In fact, the average household is spending nearly 40% of their income on housing alone. That leaves very little for everything else. Transportation, childcare, and even leisure activities. And it's not just low-income workers feeling the pinch. Even middle-income families are struggling to make ends meet. With inflation rising faster than wages, it's becoming harder and harder to stay afloat. The result? Constant financial pressure. This stress doesn't just stay in your wallet, it seeps into every part of life. People worry about unexpected expenses, like a car repair or medical bill, knowing it could throw their budget into chaos. Some are forced to take on second jobs or side hustles, leaving them even less time to relax or spend with loved ones. And let's not forget the emotional toll. Living paycheck to paycheck can make people feel trapped, anxious, and even ashamed. It's a silent stressor that's always lurking in the background, draining mental energy. When the cost of living keeps climbing while wages remain stagnant, it creates a cycle of financial insecurity that's incredibly hard to break. It's no wonder so many workers in the UK feel like they're stuck on a treadmill, running as fast as they can, but never getting ahead. The high cost of living isn't just an economic issue, it's a major source of everyday stress. Number 3. Job insecurity. Another significant source of stress for British workers is job insecurity. In a world where layoffs, restructures, and contract terminations are becoming increasingly common, many people feel like their jobs could disappear at any moment. One of the key drivers of this insecurity is the rise of zero-hour contracts. These contracts, which don't guarantee a set number of working hours, leave workers in a constant state of uncertainty. Will they have enough hours to pay their bills this week? Or will they be left scrambling to make ends meet? Even those in full-time positions aren't immune to this anxiety. Economic changes, such as the impact of Brexit, global market shifts, and rising inflation, have created a climate where businesses are more likely to downsize or automate roles. Workers are left wondering, am I next? And the stress doesn't stop there. Job insecurity often forces people to accept poor working conditions because they're afraid of losing their income. They'll put up with toxic bosses, unfair workloads, or even unpaid overtime just to keep their positions. Over time, this creates a toxic cycle where stress builds up, but speaking out feels too risky. This constant fear of losing their livelihood takes a toll on workers' mental health. Many report feelings of anxiety, helplessness, and even depression as they try to navigate an unstable job market. Relationships and personal well-being suffer too, as people struggle to balance their fears with the demands of work and home life. Job insecurity isn't just about having a paycheck. It's about the emotional weight of not knowing if that paycheck will be there tomorrow. For British workers, this uncertainty is a silent but powerful stressor that affects every aspect of their lives. Number 4. Lack of work-life balance. For many British workers, achieving a healthy work-life balance feels like an impossible dream. The lines between work and personal life have become increasingly blurred, leaving people feeling like they're always on. One major reason is the rise of technology. While smartphones and laptops make it easier to work remotely, they also mean that work can follow you everywhere. Emails, messages, and calls don't stop when you leave the office. Instead of unwinding in the evening, many workers find themselves replying to just one more email, or finishing up a task that could have waited until tomorrow. Another issue is the pressure to over-deliver. In many workplaces, leaving on time is seen as a lack of commitment. Workers often feel obligated to stay late or take on extra projects, sacrificing personal time to prove their worth. Over time, this creates a toxic cycle where work dominates every part of life. The effects of this imbalance are profound. Without enough time to relax and recharge, people experience chronic fatigue, irritability, and even physical health problems like headaches and insomnia. Relationships also suffer. Family dinners, weekend plans, and time with friends are often pushed aside in favour of work commitments. But the cost isn't just personal. Studies show that people who lack work-life balance are less productive and more prone to burnout. It's a lose-lose situation for both employees and employers. Ultimately, the lack of work-life balance leaves people feeling trapped in a cycle of stress and exhaustion. When you can't switch off, your life becomes all about work, and that's a fast track to burnout. For many British workers, the inability to find this balance is one of the biggest challenges they face every day. Number 5. Toxic workplace cultures. Workplace culture plays a massive role in how employees feel about their jobs. And unfortunately, toxic environments are far too common in the UK. From micromanaging bosses to unspoken expectations of overwork, toxic workplaces create a breeding ground for stress. One of the most damaging aspects is the lack of recognition and appreciation. Imagine working tirelessly on a project, only to have your efforts go unnoticed. Over time, this leads to frustration and feelings of worthlessness. Workers in toxic environments often feel like they're nothing more than a cog in the machine. Then there's bullying and harassment, which remain alarmingly prevalent in some workplaces. A survey found that nearly 1/3 of UK employees have experienced some form of workplace bullying. This could be anything from passive-aggressive comments to outright intimidation. And the emotional toll can be devastating. Micromanagement is another issue. When bosses don't trust their employees to do their jobs, it creates an atmosphere of constant scrutiny and pressure. Workers feel stifled, undervalued, and incapable of growth. Finally, toxic workplaces often lack effective communication. Teams become disorganized, rumors spread, and employees are left in the dark about important decisions. This confusion and uncertainty only add to the stress. These unhealthy dynamics make employees dread going to work. The stress doesn't just stay at the office, it spills over into personal lives, affecting mental health, relationships, and even physical well-being. A toxic workplace doesn't just harm individuals, it damages productivity, teamwork, and overall morale. Yet many employees feel trapped, unable to speak out or leave due to financial pressures. It's a vicious cycle that leaves British workers feeling drained, undervalued, and overwhelmed. Toxic workplace culture is not just unpleasant, it's a major driver of stress. If you found this video eye-opening, let us know in the comments. What's the biggest source of stress in your workplace? We'd love to hear your thoughts. And hey, we put a lot of effort into creating videos like this, so if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel. It's just one click, but it means the world to us. Number 6. Commute stress. For many British workers, the daily commute is one of the most stressful parts of their day. Long hours spent in crowded trains, bumper-to-bumper traffic, or unreliable buses can leave people feeling exhausted before they even start work. In major cities like London, commuters face some of the longest travel times in Europe, averaging over an hour a day. And it's not just about time, it's the quality of the commute that adds to the stress. Think about it. Squeezing into a packed train during rush hour, dealing with delays, or being stuck in traffic with no end in sight. Then there's the financial burden. The UK has some of the highest public transport costs in the world. For many, a significant chunk of their monthly paycheck goes toward travel expenses. Combine that with rising living costs, and the daily commute becomes more than just an inconvenience. It's a source of financial strain. And if you think driving's any better, think again. Constant traffic jams, rising fuel costs, and the stress of finding parking make driving equally nerve-wracking. Even cycling or walking, while healthier options, can be stressful in areas with poor infrastructure or unsafe roads. The toll of commuting doesn't stop when you arrive at work. Studies show that a stressful commute can increase anxiety, lower productivity, and even affect physical health. By the time you finally get home, you're too drained to enjoy your personal time. The commute is supposed to be the bridge between work and home, but for many British workers, it feels more like a daily endurance test. It's yet another factor contributing to the overwhelming stress many face in their work lives. Number 7. Poor mental health support. One of the most overlooked reasons for workplace stress in the UK is the lack of proper mental health support. While awareness of mental health issues has grown in recent years, many workplaces still fall short when it comes to providing meaningful help for their employees. For starters, many companies don't have adequate resources in place, such as counselling services, mental health training for managers, or employee assistance programs. This leaves workers struggling to cope on their own, often in silence, because they fear being judged or stigmatized for speaking up. The stigma around mental health is a huge barrier. Workers worry that admitting to stress, anxiety, or depression will make them seem weak or unreliable in the eyes of their employers. As a result, they push through their struggles often at the expense of their well-being. Even when companies do offer support, it's often surface level, like a one-off mindfulness session or an email about Mental Health Awareness Week. While these efforts can help, they're not enough to address the deeper issues workers face. This lack of support has serious consequences. Without access to proper help, employees are more likely to experience burnout, absenteeism, and declining productivity. Their personal lives also suffer as stress and mental health challenges spill over into relationships and home life. A workplace that doesn't prioritize mental health creates a culture where stress and burnout are seen as normal. For many British workers, this lack of support is both disheartening and harmful, leaving them feeling isolated and overwhelmed. Mental health isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Until workplaces take it seriously, stress will remain a major issue for UK workers. Number 8. Pressure to perform. In today's competitive job market, the pressure to perform is one of the biggest stressors for British workers. The constant demand to meet deadlines, hit targets, and exceed expectations can feel relentless, leaving employees mentally and physically drained. This pressure often comes from unrealistic key performance indicators, KPIs, or goals set by employers. Workers are expected to achieve more in less time, often without the resources or support they need. The result? A work environment where stress becomes the norm and success feels almost impossible to sustain. It's not just about the numbers, though. Many workers feel the need to prove their worth to avoid being replaced or overlooked for promotions. This can lead to overworking, skipping breaks, and even working through illness, habits that take a serious toll on health and well-being. Micromanagement also plays a role. When managers constantly monitor every task and criticize minor mistakes, employees feel undervalued and anxious. Instead of fostering growth, this approach creates an atmosphere of fear and doubt, which only adds to the stress. And let's not forget the impact of comparison. In team environments, workers often feel pitted against each other, competing to be the star performer. This competitive culture can breed resentment, reduce collaboration, and make people feel isolated. The constant pressure to perform doesn't just affect employees at work, it follows them home. Many workers struggle to switch off, replaying mistakes in their minds or worrying about the next day. Over time, this pressure leads to burnout, reduced job satisfaction, and declining mental health. Workplaces that prioritize performance over well-being are setting their employees up for failure. For British workers, the pressure to be perfect is yet another heavy burden to bear. Number 9. Brexit and economic uncertainty. One of the most unique and far-reaching stressors for British workers in recent years has been Brexit and the resulting economic uncertainty. While the political drama surrounding Brexit has largely settled, its impact on the workplace and the economy continues to ripple through the UK. For many workers, the post-Brexit job market feels unpredictable. Businesses are navigating new trade regulations, supply chain disruptions, and shifting market demands, leaving employees uncertain about the stability of their roles. This uncertainty is especially acute in industries heavily reliant on EU trade or labour, such as manufacturing, healthcare, and hospitality. Then, there's the issue of rising costs and inflation. The pound's fluctuation in value and increased import costs have driven up prices for everyday goods, adding financial strain to already stressed households. Many workers feel like they're being squeezed from all sides, trying to keep up with higher living expenses while worrying about potential pay freezes or job cuts. Immigration changes have also played a role. The tightening of immigration rules post-Brexit has led to labour shortages in key sectors, increasing workloads for remaining staff. For instance, NHS workers and those in agriculture and logistics often face unrealistic demands as they try to make up for missing personnel. The emotional toll of this economic uncertainty is profound. Workers report feeling anxious, insecure, and powerless in the face of changes they can't control. This stress doesn't just affect their performance at work. It seeps into their personal lives, impacting mental health and relationships. Brexit wasn't just a political event. It was a seismic shift that disrupted the lives of millions. For British workers, the ongoing economic fallout is a daily reminder of how uncertain the future feels, adding yet another layer of stress to their already heavy burdens. Number 10. Social isolation at work. In an era of hybrid and remote working, many British employees are grappling with a less obvious but deeply felt issue: social isolation. While flexible work arrangements have their benefits, they've also created a disconnect that's impacting mental health and workplace relationships. Before the rise of remote work, offices were hubs of social interaction. Casual conversations, team lunches, and face-to-face collaboration helped build bonds and create a sense of belonging. But now, with more people working from home or in isolated office setups, those opportunities have dwindled. Many employees spend their workdays in virtual silos, interacting with colleagues only through screens or emails. Even for those who work in offices, workplace culture has shifted. Open-plan offices and constant deadlines often mean there's little time for meaningful connections. In some workplaces, employees feel like they're competing rather than collaborating, which further erodes the sense of camaraderie. This isolation doesn't just affect emotions, it has real consequences. Studies show that loneliness can increase stress levels, reduce productivity, and even harm physical health. Without a support system at work, small challenges can feel overwhelming, and workers may struggle to stay motivated. Moreover, social isolation can lead to a lack of recognition and validation. When workers feel invisible or unacknowledged, it can undermine their confidence and job satisfaction. Humans are social creatures, and the workplace is where many of us form friendships and build connections. But when those opportunities fade, the workplace becomes a more isolating and stressful environment. For British workers, this loss of connection is yet another factor contributing to the growing stress epidemic. Creating stronger connections, even in remote or hybrid setups, could go a long way in alleviating this silent but significant source of workplace stress. It's clear that British workers are facing a stress epidemic driven by multiple factors: long hours, high living costs, job insecurity, and a lack of mental health support, just to name a few. This combination creates a perfect storm, leaving millions feeling trapped in a cycle of exhaustion and anxiety. But while the challenges are significant, there are solutions that can help break this cycle and improve workplace well-being. For employers, it starts with fostering a healthier workplace culture. Companies need to prioritize work-life balance by respecting employees' time, setting realistic expectations, and offering flexible work arrangements that allow for personal commitments. Providing mental health resources, such as counseling and support programs, is also essential in helping employees navigate stress. Recognizing and rewarding hard work, rather than focusing solely on productivity metrics, can create a more supportive and motivating environment. For workers, setting personal boundaries is key. Avoid bringing work home whenever possible and create a clear divide between work and personal life. Learning to say no to unreasonable demands and advocating for fair treatment can also help reduce stress. Exploring stress management techniques like mindfulness, exercise, or talking to a trusted friend can make a big difference in day-to-day well-being. For policymakers, implementing legislation that addresses systemic issues, such as capping working hours, improving public transportation, and ensuring fair wages, can create a more sustainable working environment for everyone. Stress may feel unavoidable, but it's not inevitable. By addressing these root causes and making changes at every level, workplace, personal, and societal, British workers can begin to reclaim their time, health, and happiness. It's time to rethink how we work and create environments where employees can truly thrive. Now it's your turn. What do you think is the biggest cause of stress for workers today? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And if you found this video helpful, check out our previous videos. We pour our heart into creating these videos, so please support us by subscribing to our channel. It's just one click, but it means everything to us.